1, 2, 3, 4. Welcome to Crazy Chester. Welcome to Crazy Chester. Crazy Chester's Radio Hour. Welcome to Crazy Chester. Welcome to Crazy Chester. Crazy Chester's Radio Hour. Yeah, Crazy Chester's Radio Hour. Crazy Chester's Radio Hour.
Welcome to the Crazy Chester Radio Hour. I have two great guests today. James LeBlanc is an artist, singer, songwriter, and musician. His latest record, Nature of the Beast, just came out on Dreamline Records. And he's been a successful songwriter in the country field for many years now. And my second guest is Jimmy Nutt. Jimmy is a Grammy-winning recording engineer, producer, musician. And Jimmy and James go back long ways. They grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana. So how did the two of you meet?
First week of 7th grade, right?
I think so. Somebody told me that a guy named James LeBlanc. Can we say ass on this radio? I guess I just did.
Now you just did.
Someone told me that a guy named James LeBlanc wanted to kick my ass.
I don't even remember that.
I remember that. It's true. It happened. And so we met and became friends immediately.
You know how many people's asses I've kicked in my life?
Zero.
So were both of you already into music by then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
he was way into, he had been playing quite a bit longer than I had. Let's see, how old were we? 12 at that point?
Yeah,
Like 12?
82.
Yeah.
That makes us 12.
Yeah, so I was just getting into learning how to play guitar and drums, and he'd already been playing for a while.
I'd been playing about 5 years by then.
Yeah.
Already into it. Pretty good.
So music's always been common ground for
That's
the two
it.
of you.
Yeah.
From the beginning all the way to now.
So as far as you actually making music together or collaborating on music, what was some of the early stuff you guys did together?
Remember that song Rough Times we wrote?
Rough Times, yeah. We wrote
First time I ever co-wrote a song.
Me too.
Ever.
Yeah.
It was probably right around that time.
Yeah.
It wasn't long after.
No, you guys already had a band going.
Oh, that's right.
With,
You came into
Jennifer McMullen and Ken Monk.
And we had that guitar player, Joey Benner.
Okay, that's right.
Right, remember?
Yeah, that's right. And so I kind of weaseled my way into their group. They were already playing, and
We had
yeah. And then shortly after, we wrote a song together, I guess. Yeah.
started playing music, started writing music, started playing gigs.
Yeah.
And then not too long after that, another year or so maybe, is when you got your Tascam 4-track.
Yeah. Started learning how to do home 4-track recordings to cassette tape.
Had a good ear immediately. I remember that.
So that's when the engineer seat was planning.
Yeah. Yeah, I was the guy that knew how to hook up a PA and make sound happen. And,
yeah, man, you always had the ears. Always.
So would you mainly play locally around Shreveport at that time?
Yeah. Played school functions. Friends of ours would have parties at clubhouses of apartment complexes that hire us to play. And we were, we played the YMCA. Remember that gig we did out at the YMCA somewhere? We did several of those, actually. One of them was with your brother-in-law.
That's
because
right.
I just saw that picture the other day.
That's right. And we played at LSUS.
That's right. Our buddy's dad had put on these little...
Yeah.
I remember that the Cotton Country Cloggers were on the same bill. You remember that, man?
Well, I do now that you say it.
Those old people that were clogging, and then it was us.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was us and then them, but that's really hilarious.
Yeah.
The Cotton Country Cloggers.
All right, we're talking about history.
That's right. And we actually have a picture from that show in my office.
Is that the one where you jumped?
Yeah.
My sister was really into photography at the time, and she would show up and take pictures of us, and we had it all planned out that I guess that I was going to jump off an amp at some point, and she happened to capture that, and it's on my wall in my office. So,
yeah. So, how did the whole music thing come from? Did any of you have like music run in the family, or where did you guys soak it up?
My dad was a guitar player just for a hobby. He worked at a factory, but he played guitar, and my mom really loved music, and her mom liked to write lyrics, and her dad played guitar. So I kind of showed up here on the planet with it already in me, and man, I mean, for as long as I can remember, I played guitar. As long as I can remember, and then right after I started learning how to read and write, I started, writing little verses that rhymed, like immediately. I mean, it just happened. It was just something that happened, and it's always been there.
Yeah. So on your record, it's mostly originals. There's also one of your son's songs, but there's also a version of Beans, the Shel Silverstein song. There's a connection there with your dad too.
Absolutely, man. He liked to play guitar as a hobby and sing. He had a great baritone voice, and he liked to do it as a hobby. But he was pretty dang good enough to entertain at family functions. My grandma had 5 sisters, and so they were always wanting him to play at all the time. And so, man, he was always the entertainment, and so he picked songs that he liked, and he had a kind of an eclectic taste in music. But that was just a song that he heard an act called The Brothers Four on the radio. Had a hit with that song Beans, and so that's where he learned it. And so I learned it because he learned it. So I learned most everything he did. And so, he played that all the time. Played it around the kitchen table. I've been hearing that song all my life.
Yeah, I totally remember him. He taught me that song too, sitting at James's kitchen table.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Taught me how to play 9-pound hammer, and stuff like that. So
that's it.
Yeah.
Was there any particular point in both of you, like life, where you thought, well, this is going to be the career choice too, or is it like gradually evolved that way?
I mean, I knew it was for me from before I was 20. I knew that somehow, some way, I was going to carve a life out, and that's what I did. And my dad was kind of a man of few words, but I did ask him one time what he thought. I said, I'm thinking about doing this, like, for a career and for a life or whatever. What do you think? And he said, I never really had a dream or anything like that was burning inside of me. He said, but if I did, he said, I would have gone for it with all of my heart. And so that was kind of I kind of got what he was trying to say, go for it. And so I did, and it's been pretty cool so far.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I it's always what I've wanted to do ever since I got into music at 12 years old. I mean, we used to dream about, going out on the road and doing, being traveling musicians and all that stuff. There have been different times in my life where I've doubted that I was going to be able to do it, especially when I got married and had a kid. I kind of put it on the back burner for about 5 years and just said, I'm just going to get a different career and just, take care of my family. But man, it just starts building back inside of you, and I just couldn't escape it. I just wanted back in so bad, so anyway, every move I've ever made in my life has been to find a better situation, a better music situation. And so, yeah, man.
Was it around the same time when you moved to Texas?
Mm-hmm. Together.
Yeah, well, I moved to Dallas first.
You were
Yeah, I went, let's see, about a year out of high school, I moved to Dallas. kind of under the guise that I would go to some college. My dad was encouraging me to go to college, so I went there to kind of appease him, but really I was there to find some bands and clubs to play in, which I did, and I went to college for a year, or a couple of years, but anyway, and then James called, or came and visited, and said, "Hey man, we're gonna move to Austin, Texas. You know, are you in?" And so he said, "Hell yeah!" So we all picked up and moved to Austin, Texas, in about, was it 93, 92? 92.
We were 21.
Yeah.
So, what were some of the bands or names of the bands you had out there?
That was one was the Underground. We called ourselves the Underground.
Yeah, that was while we were in Louisiana. And then
we called ourselves Invisible Nature.
Invisible Nature, yeah. That's what when we moved to Austin, we were still called Invisible Nature.
Yeah.
We didn't have great band names.
You play drums and bass, and you mentioned guitar too.
Uh-huh.
What were you playing back then?
Let's see. I was playing guitar. I was rhythm guitar. And and then our bass player in Invisible Nature quit, and I moved over to bass at that point.
Yeah.
But I started playing drums in the beginning, but I quickly switched to guitar and never really played drums in a band until I moved to Muscle Shoals. I mean, I played drums, but I wasn't the drummer in a band until I moved here. So,
right on.
Yeah.
Did you, at that point, already have some experience in the recording studio?
Well, let's see. Yeah. Well, I mean, we started on his Tascam 4-track, which you can carry anywhere.
Yeah.
So, but then I remember we saved up some gig money, and the first place we went was that guy Jimmy Johnson's place. Not Muscle Shoals Jimmy Johnson, but a Shreveport Jimmy Johnson.
Right.
We went out there and did a little 4-song thing.
Yeah.
So we went. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
That was the first time for me.
What did we cut besides Andy Griffith?
We cut
instrumental. Were you singing? I was singing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Disorder.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Live or Die.
Yeah. See, James, when we were young, he was the singer of the band. At some point his voice kind of changed, and I got really into REM, and I guess you did as well. And we were kind of into alternative rock, and so I started writing some stuff kind of in that vein, and kind of, you know, which is funny now, became the singer, which I'm not much of a singer, but I could kind of sing that type stuff. And I guess while his voice was kind of establishing itself as a teenager, I sang a little bit, and we cut some of my songs at our first studio experience.
That's the only
and a song you wrote too, you know.
Oh, yeah, Andy Griffith, Disorder, Live or Die.
Yeah.
I think there was another one, but I can't remember what that one was. So we did that, and then a little while later, we saved some more gig money and went to Nightwing.
I thought we won a contest, and
maybe that was it. It was two different. The record got cut at Nightwing.
Okay.
Is that why you were in Texas? Because Danny Wilder wound up.
That I didn't play on the record.
But then we did win a contest.
We won it,
and we went live in the studio, but
played live.
No overdub.
That's
it was
right.
absolutely live.
Right.
And just cut a set.
Yeah, and Ron Capone was our engineer.
Yeah, he was.
He engineered a bunch of Elvis
worked
stuff.
with Ron Capone.
You know, so
he was good too.
Yeah. Yeah, those were good recordings.
Nightwing was an amazing studio.
Absolutely.
State of the art for the time, and I can't really remember now how it wound up being, there in Shreveport, but it was absolutely a state of the art studio.
Yeah,
I do remember that,
and I do remember the first time I walked into Nightwing. I mean, the first studio experience we had was kind of in a guy's garage with like carpet on the walls and stuff like that. So it was cool to be there, but it wasn't a real studio. But I remember the first time I walked into Nightwing, I was just like blown away. Just like, man, the studio is somewhere I want to be,
Yeah.
So that was fairly important to you.
Definitely. I remember just being really impressed by that, being in that space,
How long did you guys stay in Texas?
I stayed there for 8 years.
I came back.
Yeah.
to my hometown at the end of '93 to help my mom with my dad. My dad passed in February '94. And my dad asked me. He was like, "You need to come home and take care of your mama." So I said, "Okay." So, we weren't burning up. We weren't tearing Austin, Texas up anyway. We were kind of misunderstood, know. And then, as a band over there, jam bands were all the rage at that time in Austin, and we weren't that. We were trying to do concise pop. 3.5 minute songs, 4 minute songs. And so we were a little bit misunderstood while we were there, so we weren't really lighting it up. So it was kind of a good time to step back and reflect. But Jimmy stayed on over there.
Yeah, I stayed and playing a few other bands, and continued playing bass in a band, Shelley King's band, and then a band called the Apaches of Paris.
And y'all lit it up.
Yeah, Apaches of Paris was a band that was already kind of happening in Austin. They had a really good following, and their bass player quit, and I tried out and got the job, and that was a really cool experience. We played a lot around Austin and Texas, and New Orleans, and a few other places, and that was a really cool band experience for me. Yeah.
So, you're back in Shreveport. What brought you to Muscle Shoals?
I went back to Shreveport after the Texas thing to regroup, figure out what was next, bury my dad, hang out, and just try to figure out what was next. And so what was next in my mind was to become a professional songwriter. And so I played gigs at night and made up my mind to wake up every day during the day and write songs. And I did. I wrote a lot of songs. And started taking trips around and started sending tapes out just to anybody, anywhere that would listen to see if I could get some kind of an opportunity to break into the record business. And in '95, this guy that I had played drums with relocated to Little Rock, Arkansas, and wound up getting a record deal. And the guys he was in the band with were huge fans of Muscle Shoals. And they came over here to Fame in '95 and cut a record. And while they were here, my buddy who was the drummer started telling the Hall family about me, and that I was back over there in Shreveport, writing songs, and then that I was talented and whatnot. And so the Hall family invited me to send songs. So I started sending songs to Rick and Rodney. And over the course of the next year and a half or so, we started getting serious about doing business. And so they finally offered a couple of different contracts to me in 1997. One of them was a production deal where they would record me, pay for it all, put me in front of record labels, do what they call showcases, and try to get a deal. And the other thing they offered me was a publishing contract. And so I signed both of those deals in 1997. And that production deal lasted about a year, and we wound up not getting a record deal at that time. But I started getting songs cut by country artists about a year and a half after I had been there. And that's what I had been looking for, an opportunity somewhere, somehow, to carve a life and a living out in the music business beyond just playing covers in bars, which is all I had really basically ever done up till then.
Yeah. So you're working at Fame, and then I heard they were looking for an engineer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, and he didn't move here immediately either. He commuted.
I commuted
from Shreveport
for a while,
for a few
till 2001.
Yeah, several years. He would drive 8 hours, spend the week or 3-4 days, and then drive home and play gigs on the weekend. Yeah, man. So that's a point I wanted to make, because that's how dedicated he was to it. But I don't think they were looking for an engineer. James just, we obviously stayed in touch because we remained friends, but started telling me about this place called Muscle Shoals, Alabama, which I was not really on my radar. And so we came over and visited a couple of times. I guess this would have been in like 99 or something like that. And we came over and visited, went to lunch with Rodney Hall and saw the studio and stayed at Rodney's house and just had a big time. And man, when I saw what James was doing and how he was plugged in here, I was just really, really, really wanted to be a part of it. And so essentially I just said, look, if I moved over here, could I work and learn, basically intern at your studio? And he said, sure, but I'm not guaranteeing you anything. So my wife, Angie, who's always been very supportive of me, said, well, let's try it. So we moved over here with no guarantee of a job at all. Actually, I got a day job in Decatur to pay the bills. And but it just so happened when I got here, after about 3 months, they hired me part-time. And after a few more months, the staff engineer at the time, Don Shrigley, had been there for like 10 years, and he was kind of looking for a change. And so he said, I'm moving on. And I was the guy that had been there, proving that I was serious and I wanted to be there. And so that's how I became the staff engineer at Fame.
Was that the first time you were plugged in with a recording studio like that?
Absolutely, yeah. I had heard about a software called Pro Tools when I was living in Austin, and it really fascinated me because before then, your best shot at having a good home studio would be an ADAT, which I always wanted an ADAT, and I never had one. Of course, I know now that they were kind of troublesome pieces of gear, but and they were very expensive. And so when I started hearing about this Pro Tools, where you could have a computer and you could have unlimited tracks and all this stuff, that fascinated me. So I bought kind of one of the earlier versions of Pro Tools, a Digi 001, and I just started learning it on my own in Austin. I set it up in my living room and started learning that software. And so yeah, I'd never worked at a studio. I had recorded at a studio a few times, but yeah, I just showed up over here knowing how to run Pro Tools, which at that time was valuable because all the studios were moving to Pro Tools, And so Don Shrigley actually helped me a lot as well. He taught me a lot about, how to get, how to patch and how to get a sound through the board and things like that. So, but yeah, that was my first job in a studio. Yeah, I got lucky.
Yeah.
It's a good first gig.
Yeah.
And a little while later, you actually did a record over there too. Was it called Muscle Shoals City Limits?
Yeah, we did a record. We did. Jimmy and I together and Rodney. Yeah, it was cool. And it was fun.
Well, I guess Rodney had started Muscle Shoals Records. I don't remember if he had started right before I got there or right after, but it was a new kind of a thing. They had started this record company.
Yeah.
And we did a record on the Decoys. That was one of the first records I did. And then
record.
shortly after
Russell
that,
Smith.
we did a Russell Smith record, which was really great.
Yeah, that's a cool record.
And then we did a James record. So all those were on Muscle Shoals Records.
Yeah.
That Fame had started, a record label that Fame had started.
Yeah. So after Fame, what were you guys' next steps?
I didn't leave Fame till a few years ago.
Yeah. I was there for about 3 years, and I was the staff engineer for their publishing company, and one thing led to another, and I ended up leaving Fame and had a studio in my bedroom at my house. At that time, I'd kind of started developing some clients, and so I set up camp in my house and had a studio there. Then I went back to work for Fame. This time I went back and worked for Rick directly. He called and asked if I would come work for him. I did that for about 6 or 8 months. But at that point, I really wanted to have my own studio. I wanted to have my own building, have my own studio, and found a little building over here in downtown Sheffield, leased it for about 3 years, and then found the building that I'm in now in downtown Sheffield and bought it coming up on 10 years ago. And just started the NuttHouse Recording Studio, and so that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, and you continued writing for Fame.
I did. I wrote for Fame, and being a professional songwriter, it's a full-time job, man. They want you to be ready and willing to write a lot of songs. And so that was cool with me. So from 1997 to the summer of 2012, it's about 14 and a half years I spent with them. It was a really good 14 and a half years. Wrote a lot of songs. We had a really good run. I had about 30 songs recorded by artists, and 3 of them that were, bona fide hits, and one of them that a song I wrote with Gary Nichols, it cracked into the top 40, but it didn't get much further than that. I think it peaked at number 38. But yeah, man, and that basically involves just setting up appointments with people, other songwriters, other professional songwriters regularly. It's kind of like a 9 to 5. It's pretty much a day job. And so that involved a lot of trips back and forth to Nashville, and then some Nashville songwriters would travel down here. And then it involved a lot of studio recording. When I wrote something that I was fired up about, I would record it. And I learned how to play a few different things. I learned how to play bass well enough to play on my own stuff, and then we programmed a lot of drum loops because it was a little bit because it sounded so authentic there for a while, and so I did a tremendous amount of studio work and a lot of writing, and so that's what my life revolved around for years and years. I mean, it still does. But for years and years, and I also learned a lot from Don Strigley about how to perform in the studio, which is an entirely different thing from a crowd of people in a honky tonk. There's no comparison, and he taught me stuff like how heavy or light of a pick to use when you're playing an acoustic guitar track, which things like that never occurred to me, but he, taught me how to approach recording, and so that was cool. And being at Fame and just getting to do this for a living is like getting a master's degree, I would think. I never really went to college, but I mean, it was just just learning everything there is to know about stuff, like not running the knobs, that's not what I mean, but just like how to perform in the studio, the craftsmanship of songwriting, catching inspiration and capitalizing on it, and stuff like that, and just a total education.
Learning how to, hear yourself in headphones.
Heck yeah.
And what that's supposed to sound like, because that throws people for a loop,
Singing like there's no tomorrow, man. I was able to sing in the studio, which apparently is not that easy of a thing to do. Some people have a hard time with that.
And that's the great thing about landing here in Muscle Shoals, or I guess other recording centers around the world, but there's such a heritage of making records in this town, and then folks like Don Strickler or Alan Shulman or Rodney or Rick or all that, Walt Aldridge, Brad Chris, but people that helped us and taught us and passed the tips and tricks and techniques along.
Heck yeah.
You have to be in a place like this to learn that. It's not it's not just second nature, that's for sure.
Oh man, and getting to write with these veteran songwriters, wow, man, it was so amazing. I have been lucky to have a voice people like to hear and to be able to play. But I learned so much about writing from these other people, because I did write all those songs that I said I wrote back home, but they were all pretty much by myself. Never had anybody to bounce ideas off of. And so getting over here and writing with older people who had been having hits and stuff like that for a long time, I learned so much about the craftsmanship. And I learned about how it's, more about perspiration than it is about inspiration, which is something I didn't really, I used to think, you get an inspiration at 3:30 in the morning and you jump up and write a song down. I didn't understand the discipline and the craftsmanship of songwriting. Not really, till I got here and began to learn that. Well, these people get up and every day, and they come together and they meet and stuff like that. And just my songs just got exponentially better with serious songwriters in the room with me. Like, really, they got a lot better. And I learned so much from guys like Walt Aldridge, Russell Smith, and others, lots of others. I got to write with some really incredible people so far. It's been fun.
Yeah. And you on the other side of town here in Sheffield, you established a NuttHouse almost 10 years ago.
Yep.
And which I guess eventually ended up with you winning a Grammy for the Steel Drivers 2016 album.
Yeah. Was it? Yeah.
Bluegrass Grammy of the Year.
Right.
So, tell us a little bit about those, few years. How did, building the studio, kind of establishing it, how did that all work?
Okay. Well, it's interesting because in 2000, when I became the staff engineer at Fame, there was, including James, there was also a guy named Gary Nichols who was just getting his start as well. He got signed to a publishing deal and had a band called Gulliver that I was recording on the weekends. There was a guy named Jason Isbell who was a signed writer at Fame, and he started working on a solo record. We started working on that together, and so there were several of us at that time that were trying to kind of get a start. Angela Hacker, she was there. Zach Hacker was there. A lot of us, Scott Boyer III, Jimbo Hart, we were all figuring things out together and really all hungry and really working hard and just trying to make something happen, and so these are people that were around in the beginning of my career in the studio business. So fast forward many years later, most of the work I've got in the studio it's just word of mouth. You do a good job for one person, someone hears that record and they go, hey, this is cool, I want to work with you. So it just kind of grows over the years, which I love that. I love that my business has grown organically like that. I guess if I was in New York or LA, I would have to advertise, but I don't here, So Gary Nichols ended up joining the Steel Drivers after Chris Stapleton left. I don't know exactly what year that was, but I'm saying that Chris probably left in like 13, 12,
Maybe
13.
Maybe even a little sooner.
Okay, and so Gary Nichols got the gig and started touring with the Steel Drivers, who were an established band at the time. And of course, Stapleton took off on his own. They did a record called Hammer Down with Gary. That was the first record they did with Gary. They recorded it in Nashville. But Gary, we did all of his vocals here because Gary and I were really tight, and he wanted me to be involved, and he wanted to work here. So I cut all his vocals, and it was a good album, did okay. And then the next record they were going to do in 2015, Muscle Shoals was really, hot at the time. The movie had come out. It was kind of a light on Muscle Shoals, and a lot of people were wanting to be associated with Muscle Shoals. And so I think Gary kind of lobbied pretty hard for the Steel Drivers to do their record in Muscle Shoals or Sheffield. So anyway, they thought it was a good idea. So we cut the new Steel Drivers record here in 2015. It ended up being called the Muscle Shoals Recordings, and the Steel Drivers had been nominated for a Grammy 3 other times, but never won. So I knew we had a good record. I think everybody felt pretty good about it. We cut it, a lot of it mostly live on the floor. There was a few overdubs, but a lot of Gary's vocals were live, and so it had a good feel. And we turned it into the mastering engineer who actually worked for the label Concord Records, or Rounder Records. And that was the first time that someone said, man, this is a great record. You guys are going to get nominated for a Grammy, which blew my mind because wow. I mean, that's pretty cool. So sure enough, we got nominated for a Grammy, and which is just unbelievable, on its own. So Angie and I, my wife and I, decided we're going to get a ticket and go to the show. I mean, why not? I mean, this may be the only time this happens. I don't know. So we go out to L.A. and go to the Grammys. We're up against Ralph Stanley and some other, big name bluegrass folks. And we show up, and it's our categories during the day. And we walk in, and we immediately find Jason Isbell and his crew. And he was nominated for a couple of Grammys. And Rodney Hall was there. And so here's me, Gary Nichols, Rodney Hall, and Jason Isbell sitting together at the Grammys waiting for our category to come up. Well, Jason's category comes up. He wins a Grammy. So we're all just freaking out, I mean, one of our own just won a Grammy. So there we are. Our category is next. I mean, literally right after Jason. So we're still kind of on a high from him and almost have to, miss the fact that we're up. So here we are, Bluegrass Album of the Year, Steel Drivers. We win it. So, it's just unbelievable, man. I mean, we're just freaking out. It was just one of the coolest things in the world to have that happen, to be recognized, and for us to be together there. It was fantastic. So there you go.
Yeah. What are some of the other projects that you did here that are really meaningful to you, although they might have not gotten the exposure that particular record did?
Well, I mean, James and I did a record together last year. Was it last year?
We'll get to that one.
Okay, all right. Put that one on hold.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, man, that's a tough question. I recently did a record on an artist named Brandon Wide that I really like a lot. Brandon's an artist from Indiana. He lives in Nashville now. Really, really, really good guy, and I think he's got a lot of potential as an artist. I'm real proud of that. Man, you're going to have to help me. It's hard for me to think of all the stuff I've done here. What else? I don't know.
You didn't do them all here, but you worked on a couple of Buffett records. That had to be cool.
Yeah, I worked on several Buffett records.
Not here, but
not here. Yeah,
on location.
Yeah, we got to work in Key West at Buffett Studio, and yes.
But you did like Billy Bob Thornton.
Yes,
and
Billy Bob
Alabama Shakes. You did something.
Yeah,
and that other R&B guy from California.
Yeah, Chris Pierce.
That guy.
Chris Pierce did a record on him. He's a great soul singer from L.A. Yeah, Billy Bob came in and cut some tracks here. Billy Ray Cyrus, we recut Achy Breaky Heart. Did a new version of that, and which was written by a good buddy of mine, Don Von Tress, who I work with on an ongoing basis. Clarence Carter.
That's right.
We cut some Percy Sledge stuff here. Percy's last two albums, he did a gospel album and a Christmas album, and we cut some vocals here.
That's
got
cool.
to work with him, and actually we filmed Percy's interview for the Muscle Shoals movie here. But man, I'm forgetting a ton of people. Jason's been here working. Jason Isbell actually produced a couple of the Steel Drivers tracks on that album, and cut a really cool thing with Jason Isbell and John Paul White here. For an Alabama tribute album, we did a version of Old Flame in a minor key with them doing a duet, which was a really cool thing. But and worked with the Blind Boys of Alabama. We cut some stuff at Fame, and I mixed it here, and that got nominated for a Grammy, but we didn't win. But anyway, man, I've gotten to do so many amazing things. It's hard to recall specific ones, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but a couple.
And Andreas Werner, I've done lots of Andreas Werner stuff here.
If you want it or
The
not.
Decoys, yeah, we did a cool Decoys live record here.
Yes,
And,
That's cool. That's
really cool Decoys live record
the
here.
Carla Russell record.
Carla
that's about
Russell
to come
record,
out.
yes.
Shoot, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, you guys, a couple of years ago, kind of reunited in the studio to make a record.
Yes.
And tell me a little bit how that one came about. What was the?
Well,
how did you decide to
I'll
do it?
start and then I'll turn it over to you. I mean,
What?
so we already mentioned that James did a record at Fame called Muscle Shoals City Limits,
Yeah.
which was a cool record. I was super proud of it, proud to be a part of it. But that record was kind of a collection of demos and different recordings and things like that. So in the back of my mind, I always wanted to do a James LeBlanc record where we went in and cut a record, with purpose, and with a band. And so we started talking about that a few years ago, and I approached him with it. It was after I'd won the Grammy with Still Drivers, and
before that, he didn't want to work with you.
yeah, pretty much, yeah, pretty much. No, I just think we had a little bit of renewed inspiration, I guess. But anyway, so that was something that I'd wanted to do for a long time, and so he agreed to do it, and so we did it.
Yeah. And I after I left Fame in the summer of 2012, in the spring of 13, I signed a new publishing deal with the BMG Publishing, and so I wanted to, give them my full attention, and I didn't want any distractions from being a professional songwriter. So that's what I did. Is a new company, new opportunity, new deal. I needed to build up a brand new catalog and start from scratch. So I really focused on that. And cutting a record and trying to be an artist and a professional songwriter, is challenging. And it can be a distraction if you're not careful. So that's, why we didn't do another one before now. But I got kind of excited after Jimmy won the Grammy, and I was just thinking maybe this is a good time to do it. And I had a few things I needed to get worked out in my personal life, and so I got a few things worked out in my personal life, and just thought it was a good time, and I hit him up about it. And he thought it was a good idea, so we started planning it in the early part of 16? Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Planning it meaning just started cutting guitar vocals of a bunch of songs to get down to the essence of what we wanted to do and what we wanted it to sound like. And it was really neat for me. I got to go back through my whole catalog and figure out my favorite songs. And so I cut a couple of BMG songs that I liked while I was there, that I wrote while I was with those folks. And then some of the songs I went way back to my Fame time, and I wasn't concerned about, is a song new or is a song old, because nobody knows how old a song is unless you tell them how old the song is. So I just wanted to cut my favorite stuff, and I believe I did that. I really believe I did that. Nature of the Beast is the title track, and I wrote it with a guy named Travis Meadows and another guy named Matt Warren. But Travis Meadows is my new hero in the singer-songwriter business. He's really amazing, and I got turned on to him a few years ago and listened to a couple of his records and got to write with him. And so that's a highlight for me on the record. And then 4885 is a song I wrote by myself about my house growing up back home. And that's a highlight. But we just got to do it the way we wanted to do it. It was just me and you.
Yep.
And there are not only like the family connection in the songs, but also in the people who were part of the record.
Yeah.
Angela Hacker, who has not only been a collaborator of yours and duet partner, but also longtime partner.
Absolutely,
live.
my better half.
She's a big part of it, and so is your son Dylan, who wrote the song, played guitar on it.
Yeah.
How does it feel for you to have a kid that's kind of following in your footsteps?
It's amazing. I love it. I'm proud of him. He's so talented. He had the unique opportunity to grow up in the record business. He was walking around in the halls of Fame, hanging out with guys like Larry Byram, Russell Smith, hanging out with Rick Hall. He's been a part of this community since he was 10 years old. And but his talent is God-given, and I showed him how to play G, D, and A and E But I mean, I can't take just a whole hell of a lot of credit for what he's become, because I mean, man, he got so good so fast, and he got his record deal when he was like 19 years old. So he's been making records and traveling all over the world since then. But I taught him some of the basics, you know. But I mean, he's just I remember the first song he ever wrote when he was about 10 years old. It was a damn good song. It only had 2 chords, but it was a damn good song.
I remember The World Is Talking About You.
Oh man, yeah. I mean,
remember
you know,
that
he
song
was just, you know,
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, he was in the studio
Yeah.
working just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
And
Pestering us to record him.
yeah, man, we cut his songs and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and it just feels great, man. My whole life's been about music, the love of it, being in it, making a living at it, man. I love it. I love waking up every day and thinking, all I really have to do today is either write, play, or sing. And that's really pretty cool. I mean, I don't know what more a person could really possibly ask for, but I'm super proud of Dylan. He's getting ready to cut his 4th record with a record label called ATO Records I think they're out of Massachusetts, and he's just doing really, really well with it right now. Very proud of him.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jimmy, how is it producing one of your very best friends?
Well, you know, it's fantastic, and in the very beginning, I knew we were going to co-produce this record. I mean, first of all, James is an amazing producer, and himself, he doesn't need me, but I mean, we've worked creatively together for a long time, and so it was great, man. I mean, we went through the songs together. We picked the songs that we both liked. You know, we went back and forth on some of that, but in the end, we both signed off on all the songs. You know, I feel like I helped him get some of his vocal performances, and which is not hard to do with James, you know, and so it was just a joy, man. I mean, you know, we just put our heart and soul into it, and just made the best record we could, and I think it shows, and I think people react to it, but. I love producing records. I you know, several years ago, I mean, I was mainly a recording engineer for most of the time that I've been here, but I started trying to do a little producing a few years ago, and that's my passion now. I love to be in that seat, but mainly I love to co-produce with an artist, because you know, I'm not the type of producer that wants to put his stamp on things. I want to help the artist realize their vision and be, you know, the best version of themselves, you know. So I'm just there to kind of help that along. So we'll continue, you know, co-producing records together as long as he wants to and I want to. You know, we'll keep doing that because it's great.
So
you know?
what's next for you guys?
Well, we're about to start recording a new record, which I believe is going to be a James LeBlanc and the Winchesters album.
A lot more Winchesters.
Yeah.
A lot less LeBlanc. We're going to incorporate Angela.
Yeah.
Get her singing on it. She's way too talented not to be a lot more involved in what we're doing.
Yeah.
And everybody agrees with that.
Yeah.
So we're getting a plan together, you know, trying to play as many gigs as we can, gathering songs for the next project. And we've got the facility here.
Yeah.
As soon as we're ready to go, we're going to pull the trigger on another project.
Yeah.
Which will probably happen, I don't know,
soon. Yeah,
soon.
It needs to happen soon because we need to get something. I'd like to get something out in the fall or something if possible, you know, and we're excited about it. We've got several songs already picked out, and yeah, man, this is what we do.
Yeah. Well, I wish you guys just the best with the upcoming project and all you guys' touring activities too.
Thank you.
And hopefully it'll even do better than the current one. And it's
Heck
just,
yeah.
Hopefully so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thanks for being my guest today.
Thank you.
My
Thank you for
pleasure.
having us.
Thank you, Andreas.
This was the 23rd episode of the Crazy Chester Radio Hour. We taped it at the NuttHouse in Sheffield, Alabama. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. Until next week.